Hello, in this video you'll learn how you can import or read Excel files in C# and .NET 9 specifically in this case. Other versions are also applicable using specifically ClosedXML library. Now for this example we are using this little table of products. This is the same as in the previous video was exported. So check out that video if you want to learn how to export different things into Excel files, how you can set all kinds of values in cells, in different cells, and also add the formulas. In this particular case, what we want to export is just this sort of table of products. We do not want to include total, and you'll see how you can exclude certain things as well, how you can sort of find them and exclude them. But the code itself, first of all, starts from having some kind of arrangement, some kind of a data structure for the actual data, for the sales data, as we might call it, or you might have something else, but basically these are the three columns. We have product, we have quantity, and we have price. Of course, we don't have total, we don't want to export that, we'll ignore that, and that's going to be part of this whole arrangement. So in order to read the file, we will need to open the Excel. It is Excel, but it is Excel, right? Workbook. So we open that just the same sort of similar way as we would write it. We would save it, of course, in the same path, but basically we're just using a path. So we either save to the path or we open it. Just open a file or write to the file. A relatively straightforward thing. Now, as long as it is a proper Excel file, it will be able to open that and it will be able to read it. After that, we need to set up a worksheet. So since we are reading one, we are trying to get one by its name. Specifically, we provide a name here. We do have a little overload here. We can also use, as you can see right here, position. So that would be position basically of that sheet, worksheet specifically, right? But in this case, for the purpose of this example, we are using the name, and generally I would recommend using the name if you can. If you cannot, then try and go by the you might call it even ID, right? The position, but then if someone accidentally switches those tabs for worksheets, position may change, and things can be a bit troublesome. So best would be to most likely add some kind of an ID if you want to export and import all these sheets, or alternatively, if you only have one worksheet, if you have some kind of a template, you only have one worksheet, you might want to use simply position first, and that will be your only worksheet, so you have no problem with that, and you just pick that and then use it. After this, we use rows used, so we only sort of basically select the actively used rows. As you can imagine, in Excel you can have thousands of rows, so generally Excel can kind of determine that there are rows and then there are columns that are not used at all. There's nothing inserted in them, there's no formula in them, there's no styling on them, there's nothing on them basically. So it will be able to retrieve just the rows used. Now, it can be a useful thing. Of course, you can pick things one by one, but these features allow you to sort of speed things up a bit and make it a bit faster, and just perhaps avoid some certain confusion as well, avoid some errors in the whole arrangement. So after that, we will read each of the rows for the table that we have. Of course, this would be slightly different if you had several tables, say one by one in terms of a column. You have a column perhaps of tables, or you have a rows of tables. So then the whole arrangement changes. We are just looking basically at one table in one certain place, so basically starting from the top in this case, from the top and from the left, more importantly, right? So then what we can have, we get all those rows that are active, that are being used, and then we skip the first one. So there is a useful feature here. You can actually skip the first one because the first one usually is a header row, so we don't need to read that. Now, again, this is a very sort of a clean and straightforward thing. If you have anything more complex, you will probably just need to access certain cells like you see in this right here. You can access it also from the worksheet directly. That's a topic for another lecture. We have in this case just the row from our rows list, and then from the row we access the cell 1, right? Because we don't need anything else. We get the cell 1, right? Now, the interesting thing here, we get the cell 1, but if we go back just quickly to the Excel file, you can see right here, this is the product. So cell 1 is the product, that is what we're getting. Now, the cells in general, doesn't matter whatever library it is, in general, in Excel, we do not start from 0, we start from 1. So all the cells, all the rows, all the everything will be 1, 2, 3, and then the column and will be 1 to 3 as well. So we do not have that 0 index arrangement like we usually do in most programming arrangements. That is something quite important to remember. So we get the first cell and we get the string value for it. And in this case, we want to exclude the total, so the bottom row, and we have the total exclusion. Now, you might say, why don't we just skip or sort of limit ourselves to those 3 rows that we have in Excel? But the whole arrangement of this is to import the whole table, right? So whatever the table is. Now, in this case, it only has 3 values in the table, but it could have 100 values in the table and it would work exactly the same way because we are simply avoiding taking that bottom row. Now, it's not going to be a product there, but the value for the cell will be total, so we can simply exclude that and move forward. And that way it makes it more dynamic and quite easily more dynamic. So you always can look for these ways to avoid extra work or perhaps extra constraints on your whole arrangement, what you can import, what you can't import, how many things you can add, make it more dynamic this way. Yeah? Now, after that, we just basically add to the list, or rather create an object, and then we add it to the list. This is, the quantity is a bit perhaps more tricky. We use int pass because the quantity is an integer in this case, although it could very easily be decimal as well. Whatever the quantity you need, so of course it could be also like this. But then you would need to obviously change a few more values right here to say decimal like that, and a few more like that. But the whole point of it is whatever the value, whatever you do, you can do it, but you need to determine that it is actually the same, that exact thing, usually at least. If you are only dealing with strings, then probably no reason to do all these checks and things, although again, you never know what someone's gonna include. So you probably need to create some kind of arrangement, some kind of a validation for those values. Now, it can be, of course, if you're pushing it through an API, you're reading on the local system and you're pushing it through API, it could just be a simple validation like that, but it is important to remember that there has to be something there to validate the data, because you never know how someone might modify. Even if you just perhaps export it from one system and then import it to another, both systems you made, both systems you trust, you always need to have some kind of validation. And of course, it should be probably a bit more than try passive, integer, decimal, or whatever the type is in that case. But here we just do that, and then we check for nulls just so we are safe. Not that we really need to do that. We could just set null on there and use it like that, depending on your use case, really. But as you can see right here, the main thing is row cell. We get the index of the cell. Indexes start from 1, not from 0. And then we get the value. And whatever the value is, we can easily convert that to string. There are some more advanced use cases where you can go deeper into that, but for now it is just converted to a string. And then we set that. And finally, in this example, we just read Excel lists, use that method, and sort of display it in the console. So just to recap a bit, the main thing is using XL workbook, using the file path, then getting the worksheet or worksheets, and then getting either rows used or from worksheet getting a specific row, and then again getting back to the cells. The library is ClosedXML. Do watch the previous video on this same topic about exporting a list or some data and adding some table beauty to the whole thing. And that will explain quite a few things about the library itself and many other arrangements. You can also find the source code on Patreon. And with that said, we will conclude this video.